Exodus chapter 8, introduction. So we are still here in Kolkata in India. Walked around, did the recording of the scripture reading at the Kolkata Knight Riders cricket ground. And so we're now not far from there at the river. As far as I know, at least as I kind of see from the map, it seems that this river flows out of the Ganges River because the Ganges River kind of splits where it gets closer to the sea in lots of different tributaries ultimately. But yes, the water is kind of dirty. Okay. Right, so what ultimately is this chapter about? It continues the story of God doing signs so as to lead his people out of Egypt. Okay, so we say the second and the third plagues. The first plague, the water into blood, and then the second, the frogs, as we're going to see here, and then ultimately the gnats and the flies. So it's the second, third, and fourth plagues that are mentioned in this. You remember correctly, there are 10 of them. Right. Now, yeah. Okay, I will in the conclusion part speaks just of why in this kind of order, and I know there are certain people with certain ideas concerning the specific order in which they happen. Anyhow, right. So the first plague, previous chapter, the water into blood. The second plague now, the frogs. So God again sending Moses and Aaron to let the people go again and inform him if he's not going to let them go, then there's going to be the plague, the frogs that will come from everywhere, right, and into the beds of the houses. And just imagine you waking up. It's one thing, I think, in a sense, is waking up to a cockroach running over you, and that has happened to me once in Myawaddy, there in the border with Myanmar border with Thailand, in the days when you could still cross the land border, as I used to go by bus from Thailand. And so yeah, a frog and a cockroach, cockroach kind of small, so not nice, but at least kind of I think a little bit better than a frog bouncing up over you while you're sleeping. Anyhow, so it was not. And God said that this is going to happen to you if you don't let my people go. And then again, Aaron had to stretch out his hand with his staff all over the land of Egypt, and all these frogs came out. And ultimately he did, and it happened because Pharaoh was not going to let the people go. And remember as well, it's not as if after every plague Moses gave him a chance to do something. Sometimes plagues just follow very close upon each other without really Pharaoh getting kind of the chance to especially in the beginning, to maybe do or say something concerning it. But again, the magicians, they came around and they tried doing the same thing, and they actually achieved as well, again, in the goal of making frogs come up in the land of Egypt. Now, like with the water as well. So, like, how do you go about proving that these frogs are now the frogs that the magicians brought out? If there's frogs already everywhere, so again, I can only imagine that it'd be something like where there's a little bit of a space where there's no frogs yet, and the magicians then came up with frogs in that small kind of a space. Because otherwise, you're kind of stupid if your magicians can come up with all the frogs as well. You have your magicians bring frogs over your country that in such a number. It doesn't sound like a very good job for a magician. You wouldn't pay them to do that, right? So again, with the blood as well, I can just imagine it's something on a lot smaller scale that ultimately is going to be done here. Okay, so Moses, the Pharaoh then called Moses and Aaron to plead with the Lord, again the covenant name Yahweh, to take away all, and that the people he will as a result, or in turn he will then let the people go to sacrifice to the Lord. Okay, but yes, we're going to see that he's not going to keep his word. So Aaron stretched out his hands, and well, ultimately the frogs came. He first asked concerning all of this, if you do, when do you want this to happen? It's like, it's not a question of, okay, let's wait a week and the frogs will kind of disappear on their own. You say how long, and Pharaoh said tomorrow, which kind of makes sense. I thought maybe say even today already, but anyhow, tomorrow. And so he said, okay, it's fine, and the frogs will go away. So Moses then asked God. God did as Moses asked, and the frogs, they died off in the house of God, just fields everywhere. And I think, like with the fish as well dying, you can understand what a big stink this would have been. So this river is not, this doesn't smell so good, I would say, but at least compared to what this must have been like, this most likely still smells like roses. No, trust me, it doesn't smell like roses. Oh, by the way, the sea is not very far from here, so the Bay of Bengal. Right, they gathered them. Again, Pharaoh did not keep his word. After getting respite, he just hardened his heart and didn't listen to God. So then God told him not to go to Pharaoh and tell him, but just do the next. And just your staff, strike the dust of the earth, and it will be gnats all over the land of Egypt. And Aaron did that, and it was the dust turned into gnats. Now, I mean, again, it's not a question of, like, because the Egypt is a desert, and there's a lot of sand there. And when the sandstorm comes up, there will be a lot of dust. So it's not as if we're speaking of like that every single little grain of sand in Egypt turned into a gnat. Okay, you need not to have everything turn into a gnat to feel as if everything turned into a gnat. So yeah, the magicians then tried to do the exact same thing, and now for the first time they could not follow suit. They could not do this, and so they had to admit that this is ultimately not our black magic anymore, but this is the finger of God, right? Not the finger of God that there was in Southwest Africa, Namibia, or Namibia today. I mean, speaking of the old days, because this finger of God that was then in Southwest Africa, Namibia just fell down after they gained independence. So yes, in Namibia it's not there anymore, but it's not this kind of finger of God. So ultimately this is God's work, right? This is what they're getting at. But Pharaoh's heart was hardened. He didn't, even though the magicians by now admitted defeat, he did not let go. So then time for the fourth plague. And again, this time now, they had to, like the previous plague, it was just do it and it happened. Right now, in this case, now again, they go back to Pharaoh to tell Pharaoh that there's going to be flies all over the place. But firstly, that they need to, he has a choice. He can now let the people go and serve him. Otherwise, if not, then it's going to be flies everywhere. And those who know flies, and it's not the nicest thing to have flies all over your body, especially if you maybe have sores. But yeah, I mean, it's just anyhow, right. And so, and then in this part we get the first time of something else mentioned, and this something else, the fact that it's not going to happen on his people. So in the land of Goshen, where the majority of his people, the Israelites would have lived, the Hebrews, it's not going to happen here. So now we get this first distinction. So already after the previous miracle or plague, the guys understood that there is not going to be. That they could not. The magicians understood that they could not, so they already lost out. Now, in this case, there's now a distinction between the people, and so God making even more clearer that He is now sending these plagues on the Egyptians and keeping His people safe. So the flies came, and then ultimately, as a result, Pharaoh's like, "Please let the people go sacrifice, but within the land." And Moses is saying, no, it's not right that we do it inside the land. Why? Because these offerings we're going to bring is going to be an abomination to the locals, and then they might stone them. Now, I mean, I'm pretty sure Pharaoh could have said, let them do it and don't stone them kind of idea, but still. It's a bit like, there's lots of people just not far from here washing themselves in the river and all those kinds of things. Now, for some people, it might be an abomination. And then they might want to stone them something now. No, you don't go around stoning people, even if it's an abomination. But yeah, this different time, different culture, different religion, and this is what might have happened. So Moses, like, using that as an excuse. Yeah, so they want Moses again asking for 3 days journey, so as to. But I've spoken enough about this now, and I'm going to repeat myself considering why, when ultimately they want to like totally get out, not just a 3 days journey, but because. Well, so I'm not going to. You can go watch the other videos concerning this. And so yes, he said, okay, I will let you go, and just take the flies away. So Moses said, okay, I will do this. I will ask God and get the flies away. This is not a fly. This is like I don't know if this is a net. This looks a little bit like a net. Whatever. But anyhow. So Moses went out, prayed to God, and God answered his prayer. And but is it going to change Pharaoh? Pharaoh in the end ultimately still did not change. He said he will, like previous times as well. But again, when push came to shove, he just said, no, thank you. Hardened his heart. No way, I'm not letting them go. Okay, so this is basically what this chapter then is. Second, third, and fourth plagues. So the frogs, the gnats, and the flies ultimately. And Pharaoh promising to do something, letting them go. A lot of discussions back and forth about what and what not, and what's the reasons for. But ultimately, every time Pharaoh went back on his word, hardened his heart, and so more signs and plagues would follow in the next chapter.